Never Again War was the slogan that Germany adopted after the Second World War. Today, in 2024, barely 80 years later, Germany is now in the lead, following the United States to wage a war on a neighbor, Russia. Hello and welcome again to the Edge Politics podcast. Geopolitical Queen here with today's episode on how Germany has forgotten about the Stalingrad War which their fathers waged on the Soviet Union and are now spoiling for a war with a nuclear power like Russia by supplying arms to Ukraine instead of talking about peace through diplomacy. Oskar Lafontaine is a German politician, a former minister-president of the state of Saarland, and now a leading member of the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht BSW party. Take a listen to his uncomfortable truth speech.
Of course, we also condemn the deaths in Ukraine. We know the history. We know that the official Western narrative is fundamentally wrong. We know what the NATO Secretary-General let slip one day, that this war began much earlier. It began in 2014 and not in 2022. We know all that, and here too the life of every person who is threatened counts. That is what should touch us. The life of the person who is suffering should touch us. That is how we should formulate our policy, and that is why it is necessary that our demand is adopted by others. I do not understand how it cannot be adopted. We need a ceasefire immediately, and we should then offer to stop supplying weapons to further fuel this war. But there is something else that is almost forgotten. If you feel guilt in the face of the murder of 6 million Jews, then you must also feel guilt in the face of the murder of 27 million Soviet citizens. Just as it would not be justifiable in view of our history to supply weapons with which Jews can be murdered with again, it is also just as reprehensible to supply weapons with which Russians can also be murdered again. Where are our memories that we actually cannot understand this in Germany? Incidentally, with regard to Europe, I just want to point out that European culture would be unimaginable without Russian artists. I want to point out that Russia is an European country and Moscow is an European city too. It really shouldn't be allowed to ban Russian artists from performing here. Everything that is happening now is so incredible. When I was young, there was a poster that was created 100 years ago. The poster by Kek Kollwitz. In 1924, you all know it, a young man takes an oath and says never again war. After the Second World War, we all rallied behind this slogan. Even in the 1980s, this was the opinion of the vast majority of Germans, and I would really like this slogan to become the leitmotif of our society again. How proud were we that a chancellor who stood up for peace in Germany could say that he was proud that Germany would once again be associated with peace in the world when it was discussed, and how proud would I be if one day we had a chancellor again who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize? And how much do we all regret that we have a chancellor today who supports war and rearmament? No. We need a chancellor who will once again support the slogan Never Again War, and who will work for peace and disarmament, and now for negotiations and diplomacy instead of supplying new weapons to Ukraine. What kind of unbelievable frivolity is that? These new generals, like Strack-Zimmermann, have I forgotten anyone? Who are now embarrassing themselves for supplying missiles that can reach Moscow? What kind of amnesia of history is that? Where have we ended up, and how long do they think they can carelessly neglect the interests of others? Why haven't they noticed yet that the USA knows very well why they are not delivering these missiles, and why do we believe these guys? I have to say, why do they think they can just blather on like that? We would also have to deliver these missiles now, and that is why we are in a special situation. That is why we have such a big task if there are elections tomorrow, and if it happens that Friedrich Mons forms the government, he would be the promoter of war and the increase in arms deliveries. It is hard to imagine anything worse, and that is why we really have a big task, dear friends. In addition to this commitment to human dignity, in addition to this commitment to better wages, better pensions and better social benefits, I also want to formulate this big task with the formula of the man who was my political mentor and who I wish could be back today and also put this party, which he led, on a different course. This formula is the lesson of our history from 2 world wars, which is quite simple. War should never again start a war from German soil, and we should feel committed to this formula. Thank you.
So what do you think? Has Germany already forgotten about the Second World War? Or they just didn't learn anything from what their forefathers did? Well, kindly leave your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for tuning in. I will be back with the next broadcast. Good day and a happy new year.